I love starting on time, so I'm assuming there's gonna be some stragglers and I'm gonna wait. After I blah blah blah, I'm gonna keep my eye out for. So I'm Robert Trent. I'm executive director here at Sierra Commons. And we help create a resilient local economy. And we do that in multiple ways, one of which is business education, and we do one-on-one mentoring, and we do cool things like tech meetups, and we're going to start working on local food security, and there's all kinds of cool stuff we're doing. I want to announce that there's the next lunch and learn. There's flyers back there, which is December 6th with Quinna Water, and she is Igniter grad. We're kind of known for this business Igniter course, helped launch a lot of businesses. Quinna's a graduate. We're doing a fundraiser called the Thrift Store Scavenger Hunt, which is super fun. I don't know, you should form a team. There's teams of 4, and we go out. It's like an all-day event. We're going to end up party at the Gold Vibe Kombuchery, and I did it once about a year ago. It was super fun, and that's that. We have a capital summit coming up for people that are looking for financing, and every Wednesday there's an accountability meetup. It's online only, and it keeps businesses on track. So just going to admit someone to the room. Hey Ethan, so Tom here is a buddy of mine and expert marketer, and excuse me, I'm sorry. We did this lunch and learn on social media stuff, and he's like, well, what about email? And it's like, well, why don't you teach a class on email? That'll be great. So here's Tom. This is Stuart. Stuart is awesome. He's the head of the Chamber of Commerce, and this lunch and learn series is a joint effort between the City Chamber of Commerce. We also get support from the Small Business Development Center. We have people online, and I will be monitoring questions and stuff for the folks online. Cool. And there's dry erase pens and his brain.
Yeah, I brought that.
Take it away. This is very casual, so just, it's obviously small, intimate, so just raise your hand. And for those of you online, I'll be back to monitor the chat and stuff in a sec. So take it away.
So I did print this little sheet. It's simply what you should expect I get answered over the course of my time here. So this is the accountability and part of what went out in the beginning, which is, so what is this thing? And we're going to get into why that's important and talk about that. But first I want to have 3 things kind of covered at the very beginning. The first one is, how many of you actually already now subscribe to either competitor or other kinds of places that do the kind of work you do, or any other kinds of emails out there in the marketplace? All of you? Yes. Stuart, you don't have any email subscriptions coming to you?
We can sign you up for mine.
Yeah, well, so describe exactly like
when you get into a loyalty program for CVS or Ravens or whatever, it sends you this regular material all the time.
Yes, of course.
And eventually you get sick of it, or you say thank you or whatever, however it works out.
Right, of course.
Right. Yeah. So that's I want to make sure that you're all consumers of email, so that as we talk about stuff, you can kind of compare and contrast to how quote unquote the big guys do it, and then kind of look and see how can you do it in your environment. The second thing was, how many of you have email databases now? A couple of you. Okay, so the others of you then are new to this. So I'm kind of keeping track of who's at the beginning of the journey and who's kind of already in the mix. And then the other thing that I wanted to do, and I want to make some notes here, is what kinds of businesses are you representing, so that we can kind of make sure that we're not just covering consumer products all the time if all of you are, let's say, attorneys. That would be silly. So give me some ideas of what the businesses are that you represent.
Consumer products.
Okay. Products. Yeah. What else?
A photographer.
Oh, well, okay, so that's kind of a service,
Screen printing service.
screen printing. Okay. What else?
Business organization,
Okay, yep. A membership organization,
right?
okay. Do these cover you guys as well? No,
Potential nonprofits.
okay, that's gonna be kind of like kids,
Yeah.
yeah, and yours?
I look at a winery, so we sell products, events, and
Okay,
memberships.
yeah, perfect. Just
Which winery?
Nevada City Winery.
Oh.
the one down the street.
Mhm.
Good, because this is, how your audience evolves and how your audience develops is based on all of this, and how you acquire is all part of this mix. So that being said, what I want to do first is to kind of separate social media and email a little bit, because a lot of the same content can do dual purpose in this environment. Social media, I'm just going to use my definition, you can use your own, but it's to kind of split the thing. Social media is a place where you can't really count on somebody seeing what you posted there. And you have no idea what interactions they're going to have with it, and somebody else controls the platform. So email, on the other hand, and this is the part that actually matters to your business, is permission marketing. So everybody whose email address you have, they said to themselves, just like, well, you may have inadvertently with some of those other places, but you said, yes, I want to see more from your business. It could be for a number of different reasons, but let's go through a short number of them. It could be because you're a membership organization and everybody's a member anyway. So you're just going to push out this material to them and make it hopefully readable or interesting for them. But it could be something where you're trying to actually capture customers because they aren't quite all the way through to the purchase step. They're really only prospects. So in that case, you want to make sure that you don't lose those people. So it's kind of like having a fish on the line, and you want to make sure they don't get away. But then you need to feed them some content along the way in order for them to, my term all the time, is to trust you more, to trust you enough to exchange cash for whatever it is that you're doing. The important part of this is that by having the email listings, by having those email addresses, you can contact them as much as you want. So that as much as you want is something that we're going to cover. All of these things are kind of part of this big matrix, but these people are people who said, I want to see more from you. And we'll cover another question is, what does that look like for you? And what does that look like for them? My business is called the customer point of view. So I'm constantly standing on the customer side and then going over here and standing on the supplier side. And you have to go and do this yin yang, back and forth thing. In my role, however, in your role as the person at the company, you really are thinking about the company all the time. And that's what you have to do. So I'm here to try to show all the different ways that you can sort of bridge that gap from where you are to making something that makes sense and your audience will be appreciative of. But that's why email is a key component. But now we want to talk about the very first block, and I block everything that I do with clients all the time on this stuff, is there's this one very large block at the beginning, which is essentially why. And that why is for your business. So you're going to spend some time trying to understand, why do you want to communicate with these people? What's in it for your business? So it can be very different at a winery than it would be for a photo service. It could be very, very different, but you need to have that. You need to spend a couple of hours to say, why are these people signing up? Why am I actually going to do this? Because there needs to be an economic reason to do it. If there's no economic reason or a service reason, then there's no reason to do it at all. And I have different kinds of clients that I work with. Some of them, their cycle time with customers is so long that touching bases with the customers all the time is too much. Other ones, well, we could talk about grocery stores or that kind of thing. They want to touch you every day, because you could actually shop at the grocery store twice a week. So there may be an advantage to them to be touching with you that often. But all of these come out from understanding who's your audience. So however you go about collecting the emails, and we're not getting into that today because that's a huge quagmire and there's 1,000 ways to do it. And there's whatever ones you're doing now and all the ones you haven't thought of yet, they're all out there. And especially if you're a membership organization, you may not even want the people that are not members. You may have two different audiences. The people who are strangers and they want information about Nevada City, or the people who are actually members and you have a thing going to them. That's two completely separate, non-overlapping propositions. That's just twice the work, but each one would go through this same process of why. Because this is going to be what structures up where you have to put your head in order to say, well, what do I want to deliver to these people? But the what do I want to deliver is, what do they want to hear? So the very first thing is they signed up to get something, right? There was, sign up for mine. I see this in stores all the time. Sign up for our newsletter. And I'm always just kind of staring at that thinking, oh, a newsletter. Okay. So we'll wonder what that's going to mean when I'm walking into the whatever kind of store it is. And you have, let's say, any general merchandise store, any apparel store, please sign up for our newsletter. What are you going to tell me? How's this going to come back? Am I going to get something once a month, once a quarter, once forever? I don't know. And so for me, the more you do a great job in this space, the more you can actually answer that question for your audience, because you can say, because here's why. So in the case of the screen printing, because you may not need screen printing right now, but when you do, I want to make sure I'm there for you. So each of these is, we know that it takes a number of touches. You're probably very familiar with this. It takes a number of touches to get somebody to be a customer. It doesn't happen on the first pass. So in those realities, the digital realities, everything else, you want to keep pushing content to them as much as possible, as much as they'll tolerate. And tolerate is not my best choice of words for that. Accept is a better word. As much as they will accept. Tolerate sounds a little negative to me.
But sometimes it is.
Sometimes it is.
Yeah.
But I know I'm really hard on myself about the language all the time. Like, because when you put it in and you print it and you send it out, like, it's too late now. It's tolerated. Like, no, I don't want it to be tolerated. What?
Handout?
Oh, yeah. So I have a little flow I'm walking through here. So this whole idea of understanding what kinds of, we're talking now about the how to create the strategy in your communication. And they need to know, you need to know what they signed up for, what's their expectation. Just like that little green sheet that you have, that's your expectation for what am I going to give you today. I want you to be able to understand all of those parts by the time we get done here today. But both of you, that's your business, and these people, they need to understand this classic Whitlam thing, what's in it for me. So the reason that you do it is what's in it for you. And the reason that they accept it time after time is what's in it for them. And as long as that's being met on both sides, the permission stays. And the unsubscribe is at the bottom, and people do unsubscribe. You get maybe 1% all the time. So for every 100, you can imagine you're going to lose one. Each time you send something out, maybe, hopefully not. Really, it's more like 0.5%, but either way, it's a number. And those people have just maybe just realized that they signed up for the wrong thing. There's 100 reasons. We don't get into it. It's just too many. We'll get into there's a little bonus at the very end on the metrics that I wanted to talk about. So if you do all of this right, in terms of structuring up your where are you, what do you need to throw at these people, what do they want to receive from you, you get into the ongoing call to action. So in the case of I'm going to use yours because it's really fun with the membership side, because you know what the chamber does, right? And then all the strangers who come to town and they want to put a business here or whatever. So they're definitely not members, they're prospective whatevers. They're tourists maybe even. So under all these circumstances, we have this great way to look at the two separate things right there. And in this case, I wanted to talk about the call to action. So the call to action for members is very, very different than it is to people who are coming and visiting and considering moving here or whatever else all the other things are. For a product selling company, it may be It may be about how to use the products, which is the existing customers, or how you could be using the products, as much as it is about buy the products. Because those are separate topics. So that would be over here in this section, it would be, product usage would be one. If you're in your world, it could be, all the agenda stuff that's, all the events coming up, all those things, it's like, okay, well, here's a bunch of built-in material that can go into these emails. And that kind of gets up to the, okay, we're going to get into this, but into the frequency and how do you structure this? Because for email to work best, it has to be structured for you. It can't just be, as I see way too often, oh, I thought of it on Wednesday, and so Thursday I sat down for 90 minutes and I put it together, and I hate doing it. And when you get the email and you see it, you say, it looks like you hate doing this because it doesn't look like you really put a lot of effort in it, And that's really kind of unfortunate because you have these people who so desperately want to see something meaningful about why I should care about you and your business. And yet here's this person and they're stretched, right? It's a stretched entrepreneur and they just don't have the collective awareness to do this upfront work to say, all I need is something from, this is a classic menu thing. If I can get any two things out of these 3, 4, 5, 6 different basic categories, if you have 2 or 3, it's an email. Now, it's not an overwhelming body of work to do this email thing. Because in this second step in here, you're building the overall template, right? So once you have the template created, and it's customized to your business, it's, everything about that is the way you do it. It's not just a banner and then text, right? That's not what you want to see unless you're Seth Godin or something, and you're going to make sure that you never are under 100 words and never over 500 words. If you're going to keep it down to that small amount, you can just do text, but it better be really, really good text. Okay, it can't be promotion, promo. It needs to be real content. Now, here's the question that should be coming up in your mind. Well, how much do you split between promotion and content? What does anybody think that might be?
I heard for
What is- What does your business want?
I heard that it should be 80% content and promotion just.
Right. And I'm fine with 80%.
That's a lot.
It's a huge number. It's 80% in general. And I'm going to throw in this wonderful caveat too about averages. I want to do this in there. Just so you're very clear. Average equals average. Yes. You don't want to be average. You want to be better than average. And so what better than average means is, does it need to be 80%? No, because if the promotional stuff is woven into the content stuff, then you have this whole wonderful, I'm providing the content part, and also I'm getting to the call to action that my business needs. So what this says is that retailer who I'm going to pick on, is anybody a retailer? No. Yes. Okay. Yeah, but a little bit, but not in this particular case. A lot of retailers, will come to the moment and they need to send out the email. And so now they're sending out this email and all it is promotional stuff. It's not even a moment about you're the owner of this business and this is why I'm doing this. And I love these products because, and I really think that blah, blah, blah. And if you are the kind of person that likes to wear shoes, with no socks, this is perfect for you. Whatever all of that is, the more, in this case, at least in Nevada County and for a lot of businesses in the early stages, you have to make it hyper personal. So it's okay to be hyper personal and to be human, because otherwise you look just like CVS and Brady's and Safeway and all these other places that are running these massive loyalty things. And all they care about is just to be average. They don't care. They have a mailing list of 1 million. So they just look at their numbers all the time. They throw out content, a classic, throw it against the wall, and they hope they know from history
this much will stick. They metric out the whole thing. That's not where you want to be. You want to be in the hyper personal, in which case all of what we're talking about gets blended. If you've ever read Seth Godin, is anybody here familiar with Seth Godin? Okay. It would be fun to go look at it because it's a classic case. Seth, and his last name is Godin. I can't remember how I ran into him, but anyway, he's a very famous author and writes a lot of progressive, think differently kinds of books. And as a result, he writes and he is hypercritical, and he is at 7,000 consecutive days of writing a blog post. And the blog post is the email. And it's clean. And it is meaningful all the time. There's not a day that I read that and it shows, it's at 2 a.m. It's delivered at 2 a.m. I don't know when he writes it. He could have written it last month. Well, that's only yesterday. So he could have written it in September. But it's just wonderful if that's what somebody wants to do. Generally speaking, though, because his business is much broader, so he's not answering to anything other than I'm thinking ahead, I'm thinking bigger, I'm thinking broader. You guys, though, have this chance up here to try to figure out, so what's in it for me and what's in it for my audience. And that's incredibly critical. So now we've gone through the call to action is kind of where we're leaving off. The call to action is all the hyperlinks that you put in your email. It's all the little buttons that you put there. It's all the ways that you drive and influence this person. Because let's say you are a product. Let's say you are the winery. Well, the winery could easily have a whole bunch of information about pairings of wines with this kind of meal, wines with that kind of meal. Look, the winery could easily get into a whole bunch of recipe stuff. It could have recipes from all over the place, and there could be a whole other chunk. One of these things could be recipes of food that goes with this wine. Another one could be new restaurants that now have that wine on board. So there could be another section in here. It's like, oh, look, we're now in whatever restaurant somewhere. All of those become one block, and you can't put 8 or 6 or 16. You want to keep it down to 2 or 3 or 4 at any given time. And then this is what gets you the content that says, oh, wow, this is interesting. And each time it's not exactly the same. It can be if all you're doing, let's say with membership, if you have a section that's calendar, great, have a section that's calendar and preface it with something up here that says, and oh, by the way.
I have a newsletter that goes out every month we have about 360 members. It's called the Chamber Voice. And we get about 50% open rate, and click-throughs are really good. I liken that to ask questions and get feedback on initiatives. And that's where things seem to not happen to the degree in which I hope they would. And I'm just wondering, from a behavioral perspective, do you find that it's are people like around those kind of things? How do you get over that barrier for someone that feels reluctant to click? Like if I'm asking for input on an initiative, say, to get them over it, do you see its wording? Do you think people are generally shy around those things? Or, that's like the only part, like I'm satisfied with every element of the metrics from the newsletter, but I would love to have more of a response. And I know it's probably a hard thing, but any just, blanket suggestions for that kind of thing?
The first suggestion is look at your numbers, because this is the part that I find amazing. So for 100 emails, right, we're only going to expect between 15 and 30%. So 15 to 30 are going to even open it.
So we have 50, so they're
stunningly ahead of the curve on that.
right.
So as a newspaper, it's working like crazy, or a magazine, which are
Right,
old school. However, if we go to the click-through rates, now out of those 100, it's only 1 to 5.
Right. And there's just no way to.
Well, but you could be excited if you get 10.
You're right.
Because what we're looking at here, and what I love is we're talking about behavioral issues. This is behavioral stuff, and we're consumers too. So ask yourself, in the last 100 emails you got, how many did you click on something, and how many did you just read and dump? And how many did you open and really only read the top little thing because it was on your phone.
Mhm.
You know, so, and I love that you're all nodding your heads. That's just one of the, thank you for that.
In the last 2 days.
Right.
100 emails
Right,
got it.
exactly.
Yeah, I have something to add to that is. Speaking just for myself, when I subscribe to emails, it's kind of like what's in it for me, the customer perspective. And whether it's for Sierra Commons, we used to like have a class, do this, do that, you know, there's all these options of things. But the second it's like, click on this and then give me information, it's like what's in it for the organization. And I've done like the Yuba Bucks, and you know, I've done a survey and it's $100 for like 5, you know, question survey. And like 5 people, I'm like, it's $100.
Yeah, right.
You can spend anywhere downtown. And like, still people aren't doing it. It's like WTF.
I think the only time I filled out surveys in the last year were because it's a product line that I wanted a different product from. Like I actually wanted them to improve the product and like create a female line of it. It's the only time I was like, yeah, I'm already a subscriber to you. I already purchased your product, but I want it to be more catered towards me. One time in the entire year.
Right.
Very specific.
The hardest things to get is responsiveness, especially if it's other than feature benefit by the product. So the feature benefit, I want that product, whatever it is, that's very clear. That's a black and white thing. They finally bought it, they didn't buy it. What do we need to do to get them to buy it? All that. So if you looked at your audience and said to yourself, how many of them are going to buy into giving me information this way?
Right.
Then you'd look at this and you'd be more clear that the 2 or 4% that actually give you feedback, which of your 300 members, if you got 7, that would be phenomenal. And if you got
It shouldn't
20,
be that way.
it would be overwhelming. Well,
I'm joking.
no, I know, I get you, but I think that if anything, let's hope that the COVID experience of so many people, I just heard a thing about this week, people are much more familiar with communicating digitally than they are communicating face to face now.
Mhm.
And so many companies are finding this really interesting challenge is that people who even sit next to each other, they are exchanging, you know, digital communication all day. So even if you put everybody back in an office space, it doesn't light up and create the culture that it used to create, so to speak. So under those circumstances, it's really friendly to do it. So you have to continue to lower the barrier. You know, it's almost like lowering the price in that case. For the other, it's raising the payback to $100 to answer 5 questions. What that means is they only really want 5 and it takes that much. And they were willing to give, you know, 20 people $5, but instead they're going to give $100 and just do 5 of them and they'll take the information and go. And in your businesses, in your efforts, you have to really pay close attention to what am I asking of people? And that's why in the emails themselves, when you build those out, you want to have things like that. You also want to have the other components, because really the click-through rate, if you have, you know, in some of my emails now, we're putting 20 or 25 different click-through opportunities in there. Well, if we're only scoring, in my opinion, if we're only scoring a 2% click-through rate on that, that's not very good. That means none of these different things that would help people understand the business are really very effective at all. And then that becomes a communication challenge, a real communication challenge, which, you know, I take on this is going to be great. But, and then you change it all around and oh, shit, it's still the same. You know, so you just have to play with it. You just have to play with it.
Did you say that you should limit, you know, call to action buttons, links to 3 or 4 per email?
No,
No.
I'm glad you asked that then, because no, that's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is in these blocks of things to talk about, you want to only have 3 or 4 kinds of sections. You can go to 6 if they're going to be meaningful, but a lot of businesses have trouble trying to do that. I don't want to build an expectation that you have to have not only the calendar of events, but you also have to have this thing about, you know, real estate this, and you have to have this thing about this thing, and you don't have to do that. So when you get to 2 or 3 or 4, you're in pretty good shape to do something. And with Seth, he's at 1.
Yeah.
He just writes one thing. So 1 to 300 words every it delivers anyway every darn day.
Is that like Heather Cox Richardson? Is that the same? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm familiar, and maybe yes.
It's the same idea.
Yeah.
One best practice I've heard is. Like for Stewart, the chamber and its members, and it's like, go to the Sierra Commons website, go to Tom's website, go out. But if for a Nevada City winery, don't send them anywhere else but your webpage. Like,
That's
once they're in your world, don't send them somewhere else.
Don't lose them.
Yeah.
Right. Unless you're willing to let them go,
No.
you know. Yeah, but if you have some event coming to town, it is possible to just put that link of the event wherever that event link is held. So let's say it's the film festival. And let's say the winery sponsoring some film or something. It's reasonable to put the link to that because it's got a benefit to your business. And it's a polite way to offer people a next destination.
Yeah, I worry about putting too many links in. So we'll have multiple events and I want to put the make a reservation button, you know,
Yes,
under each event block. That way they don't have to scroll up to find the button again. So
do that. Absolutely, you
just,
do that.
okay.
Yes. You make everything hyper local because. I don't know, depends on what your business is, but I'm just gonna use this number because it's easy. Just say half of everybody reads all this stuff on their phone. I think it's more like 3/4, but we'll just, it's a lot. So you have to think in, sections only this big, so it's an image and a caption, it's a this, and if you read any news material from all those different providers, the good ones, the bad ones, all the things. It's only that much space. So the picture and the caption you get all the time. So you just have to constantly be aware, I need to squeeze it down, squeeze it down. If you had 300 words, try to get it down to 100. If you had 12 sentences, try to get it down to 3. How can you get the point across really fast? We're in the content area here, but that's okay for a moment, because I also say, if you're going to write a whole paragraph, I'm kind of, Seth Godin style. I almost always now in any block of text, it gets just incredibly gray, and that's a way for people to click out. So I just put the most important part of that paragraph in bold text. But just do it. Nobody cares. But then if they are only scrolling, they'll at least see the bold text. That could be, one of the gems of the day kind of thing. So let's see. The other thing that you're trying to do with this whole process is to, since you've identified your customers, or at least your best customers through this, let's get into frequency. So you identify, what should I use here? Let's use the winery, okay? Although the screen print is interesting too. So you have actual customers, they bought from you at some point, and at some point they buy again. Right, so this is the metric of how many customers do you need to make your business flow. Really not complicated necessarily. If your average ticket is $1,000 and you need to make $500,000, you need 5,000 customers, right? So is that right? 5,000, yeah. So that's the metrics. So then it's a matter of, okay, let's go find those customers, right? Because we know they'll average out at $1,000 a piece. If you know all of that, then you can also look at, well, how frequently do they come back? So if somebody buys the whatever it is, when will they buy it again? And I have 2 retail customers that are at the completely opposite end. One's in the food side and one's on the furniture side. And so it's a constant little comedy for me internally to look at this one where the audience will accept something, all the darn time. And this other one is like, how often does anybody buy furniture? It's pretty rare. So it's a different kind of a format. It's a different kind of a style. It's a different kind of a awareness, because the business, to make its $500,000, they need a high ticket on the furniture side. So they don't need as many customers, but the frequency is forever. And the other side, it's about food stuff, but the ticket's much, much lower, but they come in and buy it. It's a consumable. So they come back and buy all the time, kind of like wine. But how much can you sell to those people, and work that all out? Understand that metric for your business, because that's what's going to get into how frequently do you produce this material. So in the case of the winery, since anybody could buy wine at any time, it's consumable, therefore it goes away. You would have to look at some information on your own to understand, well, how, especially with retail traffic, how often do people come back and buy? And once you start to understand how often do people come back and buy, or when do they call me again to get a t-shirt quote on the screen printing? You know, when does this happen? All of those come back to understanding you want to be there just before that happens. You want to be there right before they're going to make that decision the next time they buy wine. So the winery's issue isn't how often do they come back to Nevada City Winery. The question is how often do they buy wine? Because Nevada City Winery would like to be the exclusive supplier to that person and everybody that they know. So,
Quick question, so you have different, sometimes you have different segments of customers, you know, you have the schools that might come. for your school friends.
Mhm.
Do you then also have segments of different types of emails? Different strategies?
absolutely, absolutely. Because the email for the members is going to be a different cycle time perhaps than the email for the people who signed up because they happen to drop into town. You know, those people, if they got them, you know, let's make up some numbers as we talk about it. If they got something every 45 or 90 days, if they just were coming into town, that's probably a lot. You know, it's just to keep refreshing, maybe they'll come back, right? If they live in Miami, Florida, it's probably never, but what the hell, you're not gonna go through and take them out. You know. Right, but they signed up because they thought it was charming, and what we have to also appreciate in that exact example is that they were here for a reason. Guess what the reason could have been? Their mom and dad live here. So we want to make sure that they're still aware that Nevada City matters. And they get a little something so that they can feel better about their mom and dad who live here all the time.
Or they could tell their friends.
And they can tell their friends, exactly. So there's a whole bunch of reasons to not necessarily make it go to once a year.
That was a quick question too. How are the strategies to have people forward their emails?
There's no reason not to do that.
Okay.
There's no reason not to do that, please. We close with the furniture guy because that's what he needs. With my furniture client, it's closed all the time. You know, please send this to your friends who are thinking about new furniture or just moved into a new house. You know, and so we put that, it's a block of text that sits at the bottom right before it says, you know, his name and he signs it. It's right there all the time. Please circulate it. Every good reason to do that.
And do people do it, or are there better strategies to make them do it?
I don't know the answer to that specifically. And does it matter for a sentence? I would say no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether it's highly effective or not. It's a sentence at the bottom that says, you know, if you like me, please share with somebody else. But do it in this email format as opposed to, you know, post it on Facebook or post it here in the socials, because the socials, we have no idea if everybody sees it. So if the email goes to the person in Miami, Florida, and she has a sister in New York, she can send that thing. I just went and saw mom and dad and send it to her sister in New York. And it was because it said at the bottom, you know, please send this to anybody else you know who might be going to Nevada City or has a loved one who lives here. Or whatever.
Yeah, I'm asking because an example this morning, a friend of mine sent me and forwarded me an email. Say, hey, you might be interested in that. It's turned out to be a newsletter that I was interested in. And I wanted to sign up for it too, but it took me too long to figure out how to sign up for it, so I went back again. That happens all the time, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, because I do websites. So yes, I know it can be really hard to find where do I sign up? Is there even a sign upable thing? Sign upable? How do you do that? And you really have to be kind of clear. And also a lot of times it just says, like we talked about at the very beginning, sign up for our newsletter. That's not necessarily compelling. You know, sign up for our bi-weekly newsletter that will give you blah, blah, blah. That's awesome. Okay, I don't want it every other week. Okay, fine. I'll sign up.
So on frequency, I'm pretty guilty of not being regular, like boom, like I want to send out like 2 emails in 1 week and then it's like crickets for weeks. You know, I like having good number, like, oh, my list is strong. I don't want to have people unsubscribe. But if you get unsubscriptions, how do you know if it's the content or the frequency?
You have no idea. You could ask, I mean, there's, for most of these.
Yeah.
So another thing is, I'm absolutely platform agnostic. I'm not talking about MailChimp or ActiveCampaign or any of these things. There's dozens of these guys. They all have, in Tom's perspective, they all have largely the same product, right? But we're all captive of their space because we have some other thing we're doing there. So this has nothing to do with that. To answer your question, if that company has a way to split the why did you unsubscribe? Because I see those two, I don't know which of the carriers, and I'm sure you do when you unsubscribe and it says, why did you unsubscribe? And those 5 things are overwhelmingly canned. They don't actually inform the other, the content's irrelevant. I didn't sign up for this. It's, I think it's like a legal requirement. I want more than that. I'd love to have lots more than that, but I know, just as you called out, they're probably not going to answer. But even one might be helpful. But for me, if I'm staying below the expected unsubscribe rate and I didn't get a lot, I'm okay. If I put out an email and 12 out of 200 drop, it's that email, probably not the frequency. It's something I said that offended or missed the mark.
I kind of like doing emails on a monthly basis where you call it out for the month so people know when they're involved.
Right.
Okay, I'm getting this once a month.
Right.
And it also helps to discipline you. Like yesterday, I was working at 4:30, like I gotta get it the October
Yeah.
one in.
Yeah.
And so you kind of create your own discipline around that. And then, excuse me, you get, and then people know how frequently they're gonna hear from you.
I'm a full fan of that. I exclusively work on the once a month thing. And sometimes it's longer, like for the furniture guy, that'd be just too much. But once a month at the minimum, because once a month is going to be accepted and people aren't going to remember the last one they got, and now you're refreshing them that you exist. If, however, you have an opportunity, which the chamber would, with membership for sure, but let's say with my food client, it's the Olive Group down in Grass Valley. So she can put out something now twice a month. And we have different kinds of content. We put in the first of the month one from the stuff that goes in the middle of the month one. And then when she runs promotional stuff that's outside of what we talk about already, we put out extra ones for that as well. So it's possible that you'll see maybe 4 emails in a month.
And yeah, we do that too. With tourism based and that
Yeah.
gets pushed out in the middle of the month.
Yeah.
It's more towards the end of the month.
And I've been really happy with the lowness of the unsubscribe rate. Because all those people signed up for a reason, they really like what she does and how her business works, and they just want to hear from her all the time. And so she writes incredibly personally. And then, I do all the rest.
Helps that our products are using.
It does help. It helps a lot. And it helps that she's made.
The Olive Group and Ground Valley.
Thanks. So that's kind of where we're going on the frequency and content types. So we're kind of covered on this. So I'm getting on to what is the 4th one here on how to create message-driven content. This is the ongoing part of what we're doing. So I'm going to recommend against waiting until 4:30 on the last day. That generally doesn't create the best creative, but I think the relief that I want to give to everybody, because this is overwhelmingly work for me, is to treat everything that you're doing in this space as 2 things. I guess I'm in boxes today. I'm sorry about that. Didn't know we boxes. Maybe I could do circles. That'd be a lot more fun. Imagery matters.
So I'll just quantify that though with maybe a tip that works really for me. In MailChimp, my whole month I spend like, oh yeah, I want to do that article. So I put a text box for this topic. And then I have all my content there and I work on it all the month, but then at the very end, I do a letter that's very personal. And that's the letter that gets at the very end that just summarizes. So that's where I was kind of like, okay, how do you sound? But
I'm glad to hear you say that.
yeah, because it's not like trying to start and finish on the last day. It's like, it's a whole month process.
Well, what I'm talking about now is this hard part, which is this is the creative part. And this is the production part. Don't do them together. So collect up your good ideas over the course of the month, write the sentence or three, let it sit, come back to it, because by the time you get to this production part, where you have to just put it all into the email and the blocks and all that stuff, you're gonna edit it again anyway. You're gonna go ahead and see that, and you're gonna say, oh, this doesn't sound as good today as it did 2 weeks ago, and so fix it. And that gives you the editorial ability, just like the newspapers used to run, right? Where the person writes the article and then they give it to the not the publisher. I forget what the name is, but anyway, the editor, editors, of course, they give it to the editor, and the editor then takes it over. The journalist is out, right? The editor takes it over and adjusts it and does what they need to, and then they put it out, and then somebody formats it and goes. So give yourself that opportunity to be the journalist, just writing whatever idea comes up, even if what you write is crap, it doesn't matter. That idea is now there. You actually go and it sounds like you park it in MailChimp, which is great. I park it in Word docs, right? So I just have a Word doc for each month. And then at the end, I choose from the 5 ideas I had. I find that, oh, 3 are only good. The 3 at least are pre-written. So now all I have to do is get them into MailChimp or whatever and format them up, and sometimes go find a picture. And going and finding the picture or finding the graphic or finding these different things, that's a challenge too. So that's another piece of the creative. If that's going to take time, which it does, don't wait until it's production time at 4:30 on the day before you're going to release, because something in there will be missed. And what that missed thing will be is the 4 or 7 opportunities you had to create hyperlinks, because they probably won't happen if you're squishing to the last minute on production. And those hyperlinks are the goal. So all of this is, and this is a funny way to put it, all of this and all of this is an excuse to create the hyperlinks to get them to your business. You know, so all of this is a lot of work to put into, I just want to walk in the door. That's all I wanted for you. I just want them to respond and give me, how am I doing? You know, how are we doing as a chamber? Can we be doing something more? Could you just give me something? And all of this is to get 2 or 3 people out of 100 to actually do it. You know, so you want to create the systems for yourself that make it incredibly, incredibly easy to put these things together, so that you're not doing a design build project all on the last day, because now you feel the pressure to get it done. Whether that works on an actual calendar, first of the month, or every 4 weeks or whatever, you know, for me, it's get it on the calendar. My calendar drives the rest. If I see it on there and it's 2 weeks away, I know I better start working on it. Any other questions about all the frequency, and then let's talk exclusively about content driven. And now we're going to get into the why. So why are you producing, and why are they reading? And how do you find things that will be compelling? And the best part about that is there's no right answer. It's art, not science. So you will know, because if you apply all the tools, you'll know, because you put a call to action on that thing and people actually responded to it. So if every little block that you have, that you defined over here, has some call to action in it, well, then you can tell. You can tell, was this compelling? Did I get them to do this thing? Did I get them to click on the, well, in this case, I don't know how many emails you sent out, but, you know, let's say 100 emails from Robert to his community about this event. And those, whatever number is, got the 5 of you and a couple more, 7. So we've got 7 people.
Some people couldn't make it and asked to view the recording.
Sure.
So a few more.
Sure, which is fine, right? So you just have to kind of get to the, what does it feel like for your business? And then once you do the 3rd or 5th one of these, then you'll start to understand, oh, this is how my audience is interacting with me as a digital person. Because that isn't necessarily the you that's the person. And that's what I'm suggesting all along the way here, is overwhelmingly important to share that. Because they will interact better with you as a person than the digital person. So this is why, you know, for my clients on the whole, all of them, it's a personal thing. And I can say to, you know, Christina's thing at the Olive Room, she's at we're generally at 30 to 45% open rates. Because it's personal, because they look for that, and also in the topic, the subject line. You got to put something in that subject line that makes it compelling to want to open the email. So it doesn't even stop with how good is the content in the email. The content in the email could be phenomenal. And if all you put in that subject line is November newsletter, oh my God, all the rest of that is going to be lost entirely. So you have to pull up something out of that and say, you know, you have to actually change the return address. So you change the return address in your case to put Bryn, you know, from or Bryn dash something, or, you know, your name, a real person, so that there's a real person, because the real person is what's going to get the reply. Otherwise, it's just another corporate email that looks like CVS. And you don't want another email that looks like CVS.
Yeah, I've noticed, like, so the number of click-throughs, the open rate, all that stuff is important, but on social as well, that even though people don't click and they're like, oh yeah, you know, you're doing a lot of stuff. Oh, I saw that class you're doing. Like, there's something that they might not click, but they still see it.
Yeah.
And there's some optics involved of like, oh, there's it like, oh, you're doing good work. Oh, you're continually doing good work. You're the place to go to for great photography, or you're the, you know, even if they're not clicking, it's hard to put a number on it, but it's good to just keep on doing it.
It's impressions. You know, this is that's why it's what do we call this? Marketing strategies that work. This is marketing. You know, I mean, we can't get away from this is marketing. So in whatever that budget of money that you spend on your business for marketing, you know, 40%, 5%, whatever that number is, this becomes part of that budget. And it's incredibly important because the marketing is what's driving people to want, you know, it's creating the demand and then pushing people over to sales to say, no, I want to be a customer. So it's a very, very black and white in terms of stepping back, you know, like if you had an MBA or something. But then when you get down into the weeds, it's really, really complicated and not the same for even two of the same businesses. Because the voice of those owners could be very different and what they want to share could be very, very different. And all of that's okay. That's the best part about this. It's all okay as long as you understand what these structures and frameworks are that you can use, and that you need to actually get into the calls to action and the separations and all these things so that you can actually start to get some understanding of pushing it out, you know, and then what? So I think a newspaper would judge how well they're doing by letters to the editor, right? So that's one metric, one of thousands of metrics. And you can have your own for your different kinds of emails.
What do you recommend the maximum length of a subject line to be in a?
They limit it for the most part anyway.
Yeah, but like take it to the max of what they limit it to,
But don't
or,
put the most important thing at the end.
right?
Yes, I mean, everything that we're talking about goes back to good old journalism, right?
Right.
This whole pyramid thing. So this better be the very most important thing that you want people to get out of whatever it is that you're writing. And then this place here, that's the second most important. And this place here. So, you know, if you're running this 50% off everything, that should be at the top of the list here because that's a hell of a sale. But if it's not about that and it's, you know, gosh, I had this whatever and whatever, okay, fine. But always keep this pyramid structure in mind. Because that's the way people will read. It's the way people will click away from what you're doing. It's, you know, it gets back to all of these same things. Oh, look, this looks just like a lot of other kinds of communication. It looks just the same. How much patience do you have with the stranger who calls you on your phone? 5 seconds, unless then it's 10, unless then it's a minute, unless. So they better do the best job in those first 5 seconds or they're not going to earn the next 10. Now, I wanted to go through this very simple thing. If you've gotten to this spot, I want to talk about this very important but simple thing about automations. So automations are very simply emails that happen on their own because the process is the same every time. Now, what that means is anything can be a trigger. So there's all kinds of things that can trigger, but one of the most obvious triggers is when a new sign up comes to your audience. You have to have if you're wise, invest the time, that'd be the nice way to say that. It's very important to have a welcome message. That shows that they are now in this mix, and don't say newsletter, call it, thank you for joining the community. Find out whatever terminology that you can find that's really wonderful for your business, so that you can get them to the spot that says, here you are, thank you for coming, and most importantly, here's what to expect. Teach them right then, here's what you can expect, because this is what you signed up for. And every platform out there has a template for new signups. So use it, and then just click, go, and you won't even know what happens, but if you will send yourself an email, sign yourself up, see how it looks, make sure you love the format. The format of that should look like the format of the other ones. So, if you are using something that has a nice banner at the top, right? And then some nice headline in here, and then content, then send them a welcome email that looks like that. Not that looks like some sort of, oh, here's a big picture, and blah, blah, blah. Like, don't do that. Don't do that. Get them into understanding this is the way our correspondence with you is going to look on the device that you look at it on. And get them into that kind of understanding.
So wait, you're not recommending like a big picture, like once you right under your masthead? I always thought that's a way of really kind of creating a story that entices people further down.
Well, but it could be.
Right.
But to me, that's a kind of a risk of hoping that the picture is worth 1,000 words.
Right.
So, if I get a picture from the chamber and all it is a picture that takes up my whole screen, and it's just a bunch of pretty trees in Nevada City that I saw when I was there anyway, I may not scroll down.
Right.
So I'd want to have something near the top, and especially if the banners get big, because a lot of times the banners get really huge at the top. I want to have something at the top that says, here's why you should keep on. And I'm not comfortable, because I'm a word guy. So as a word guy, I'm not comfortable leaving that up to somebody's interpretation of a picture. I know too many ways to misinterpret a picture. And I'd like to think I can write clear enough that there's a lot less misinterpretation for a headline. Even if it's just, the calendar for November. At least that information is right there and vivid. And eventually you'll graduate to other kinds of things as you get more familiar with your platforms, whichever one you're on, because there are all kinds of fascinating ways to have automations happen. And you also get to the spot, and this is kind of interesting, and we're sort of bridging into the metrics category. With 1 minute left. We won't get to the metrics category. The bridge is that you want to have people. Lost my place now. Oh, we're you want to have people who are feeling. I got it. I got this screen back. You will be paying for however many active names you have on your list. So if you have 4,000 names and 3,000 of them are left, because 1,000 of them over time have unsubscribed, you're paying for the 3,000 that you're paying for the 4,000, not the 3,000. So at some point you want to make those go away. One way to goose that. One way to goose that is to send out something every X amount of months, 6 months, because any one of these platforms keeps track of the interaction of each individual email client out there. It's staggering that you can look at 3,000, if you have 3,000, you can look at 3,000 records and see how many times that individual opened the email. So what do? You create an email that only goes to the people who haven't opened something in the last 8 months, and you put it on autopilot, and now as soon as 8 months goes by, they get an email. Are you still alive? And then they have to interact. Otherwise, we're going to let you go. Because, you cost money for us to keep sending this to. So it's just another way to use these tools that I was kind of amazed a few years ago when I was using MailChimp at the time. And it's like, oh my God, look at this. I'm looking at my own record actually and seeing my own. What percentage of times does Tom Larson open emails? 93%. Well, it's my client, you know. But it's not, it's like, oh my, I had no idea that this was so granular. It is down to the person. So the recipes or the formulas or whatever you want to call them from all of these providers are magical. If you can find the ways to make them useful for your business. And that's the key. So I wouldn't get all caught up in automations, because automations is when you can define something that happens the same way every time. And what you're trying to do with the whole email concept is make it different every time. So are there any questions that I haven't answered? Or topics I missed? Or confusion?
I kind of want to go back to the frequency topic. I try to get an email out every week, so I want to push, I want to get people in the tasting room every weekend. But I don't know if that's too often or not often enough, probably often enough. But I wondered if you had any insight on, you know, is there a hard number? Like, definitely don't exceed this many emails in this certain time frame. Or if it's always great.
No, but I would say, unless there's something different about your tasting each week, then all you're doing is sending the same message week after week after week. Well, that's promotion, that's rock solid promotion, and people are gonna resent that eventually. All she talks about is coming into her store. Like, so they need a ton more than that, and which could be integrated with, because this weekend, this author is coming, because this weekend, this is happening, because this weekend, whatever it is. But just going out with the same message all the time, week after week, that's definitely gonna get you an unsubscriber.
Well, I mean, we have plenty of content. I do change it every week.
I figured that.
Yeah, but okay.
But that's how
we
to,
have more new information.
but that's not part, I guess what I'm saying is that the frequency isn't necessarily, is completely related to what is it you're sending.
Mhm.
So if you are gonna just send the same basic message each time, in other words, oh, it's these things on sale this time instead of those things on sale like last time, then, you know, okay, fine, each time you change it over, you send out a new email, and that looks just like CVS. You know, and if you want to look like CVS, okay. But if you want to look special, then you have to get into this other kind of thought process, which is, well, how can I make my business a little different now? Present it a little different, talk about a different component of it. So if CVS is putting a spotlight on their whole store every week, what you want to do is take whatever your business is and put a spotlight on 4 different areas. You know, and 4 different areas and 4 different areas. And every so often, don't forget, you know, to come into our tastings. So we have this really amazing thing going on in our tasting room this time. It's not the standard tasting room experience. This is what's going, or connected with the events from the downtown association. We're doing this, or don't connect it to those events because you're getting that publicity anyway. So all of those fall into the matrix of just how do you structure this up, and on the calendar for a year-long proposition. At least this is how it works out. So let's look at, if you send once a month, there's one, and that one is going to be coming out on the 1st. Then you have something that you're doing on the 10th, which could be about agendas and other things. And then you're doing another one on the 20th. That's 3 times a month now. You know, if you are weekday of the week oriented, then you also have the opportunity to plug into Stewart's events that are coming and put those into the calendar. And before you know it, most of these blocks for the course of an actual whole year are going to self-fulfill on January 1st. Then the rest is just production. Because you can really, this is what Seth, I'm sure, must do. You can do all that creative. He must write 10 or 20 of them at a time, and then he doesn't do anything. Right, because nobody writes stuff there. Much as I'd like to believe he does, I can't imagine he does that. Are there any other questions?
But
Yes.
mine's about frequency too. If you have, like, say you've got an event that, you know, you need to fill up for, you know, a specific date, and you send out an email, how often should you send something to say, hey, it's still being offered, I still have a few spots left, you know, you don't want to be too many, but you want to fill your spots.
Yep.
Is there like it's a too many, or should be one a day and like a week before, or?
Depends on the experience, right? So
what it is that the promotion is. But I work by, let me say that, I work by a kind of a rule of three. I want to make sure I'm ahead some amount if it's something that I want to do in advance like you do. If it's a sale that I'm running, I don't want to promote a sale before the actual beginning of the sale, because then people will put off their purchasing until the sale period. It's like, oh, I don't want to do that. That's not smart. So the first email goes out on the first day of the sale or the day before the sale. The second one goes out in the middle of that period, and the third one goes last chance. With maybe 2 days left, if that's a week-long sale. So they're gonna get 3. And it doesn't have to be anything other than same content, but change the subject line to, don't want you to forget. Didn't want you to miss your opportunity, didn't want you to miss the savings, you just be very kind in the subject line, and the rest of the content can be the same. Because then if they already know it, they don't even have to go past the subject line. And that's okay. They won't, generally speaking, us humans wouldn't be offended by that. If all you do though is cut and paste the existing one and plug it in and they get exactly the same thing again, that's when you create unsubscribes. It is. But we're human, this is the thing all the time. Think of yourself on both sides. Think of, if I got this, would I actually feel like I'm not being respectful?
Golden rule.
Yes, yes, yes. So don't do anything that you wouldn't be comfortable having somebody do to you. It's really quite straightforward. Any other questions? Okay, so then the bigger question is, does this answer or help with everybody's email understanding?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got one last question.
Please.
If people want to like hire you to help, they could go to the
They
customer
could go to
POV
the customer POV.com.
right here on the
or
handout.
My email's in the top.
Oh, okay. Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Robert.
I got some juicy notes. If some people are new, first time here, I'd be happy to give a tour and hang out. I never told you the bathroom was too bad. So good job in holding it.